This is my first view of Manic from 2002. It's a drama. It's directed by Jordan Melamed, and it's cast a very young Joseph Gordon-Levitt plays Lyle. Don Cheadle is the Dr. David Munro, and there will be a slide, of course. Basically what we have is a new admission to a psychiatric facility in a juvenile ward for Lyle following a fight which left his classmate with 50 stitches to the head. Lyle, who was the aggressor, ends up at this facility, and there's a number of other juveniles there with various psychiatric conditions: manic depressive disorder, self-mutilation, panic attacks. The psychiatrist, played by Cheadle, attempts to get to these troubled individuals, exploring their feelings. It's a typical group therapy sort of type movie, and how it's shot on a digital handheld video. Debut feature for the director, and I'm going to give it a look. The tone of the movie set very early on when the psychologist Cheadle tries to engage with Lyle, who's rather uncommunicative, try to establish what sort of substances he's been using and abusing, and then some security arrives with his mother, and he's told that he's going to be moved to a psychiatric unit because his actions earlier was a serious assault and he needs evaluation. Lyle starts to get agitated, starts to scream at his mother, and it sets a very powerful scene for what it's like to deal with adolescents who slide very quickly into sort of mania and non-compliance. It's one extreme, not talking, to becoming verbally very aggressive. Rang lots of bells for me. There's an initial entry for Lyle into group therapy. There's about 8 youngsters in there, all adolescents, and Cheadle's obviously trying to control it and facilitate involvement from all typical group therapy, but it's so powerful. The acting is so natural, and one of the inmates there starts to goad Lyle, who's invited to sort of say something, and the two males are like two rams locking horns before going into battle. It's terrific acting. Lyle quickly gets involved with a scrap with some guy who's clearly the brawn in the group. Eventually he has to be put into isolation, and he relives the attack with the baseball bat that's led him to be admitted here. He's toiling and struggling to come to terms with his anger, and the acting by Lovett is absolutely 5-star. This guy's a very good actor. I must get to watch Snowden as well, which he's in, and the movie he made about 5 years ago with Oliver Stone. What's quite daunting and reflects really how damaged developed economies are, advanced countries, so to speak. It's the amount of drugs on the drugs trade, which are given out daily, twice or three times for these young kids. It really is a shocking indictment, really, that we have to sort of tranquilise them to the point where they become sort of almost zombie-like. And I remember one particular lass who had doses of amitriptyline, I think it was, and the dosage was almost double the recommended dose for adults, and she was 15 years of age. But once again, there isn't really any great plot as such. It's all about the characters and how they evolve into these damaged people through their sort of acting skill. And Don Cheadle is such an impressive actor. We get the atypical scenes where young teenagers talk about music that they really get their rocks off to, and there's a word for Rage Against the Machine. And then of course there's the typical need to indulge in some marijuana, where then the youngsters start to fantasize about the grass is greener on the other side, meaning, you know, if we were all in Amsterdam where pot is legal, we'd be cured. But although, you know, it's clear that naivety we all experienced in adolescence, for these youngsters, of course, they are broken because of, in the majority of cases, because of dysfunctional families, dysfunctional parents who are just propagating the next generation of crazies. But with facilities, of course, they're now in a position to co-opt the medics so that these children can be removed. Previously, of course, they had to exist in those families, and the damage was even more severe. A subplot, Lyle befriends this young kid who's about to get an inheritance when he arrives at 18, and Lyle manipulates him into believing that they will both escape to Europe, to Amsterdam, but of course they need money. This guy is taken in, groomed by Lyle, and we anticipate that Lyle's going to steal, particularly when he gets the credit card details of this transaction. After one particular session where Cheadle manages to get a number of them to share the abuse that they've suffered, or why they reacted in a very aggressive way, Lyle then befriends one of the girls, and he shows a sensitivity to the point where the girl is willing to share with him that she's been raped by her father, or a member of their family, I'm not quite sure where. So he shows an acute ability to be trusted by members of the group, a sensitivity. Lovett is definitely the class act in this group alongside Cheadle, and obviously he's had a very successful acting career. Some of the others had no other credits, but this movie just goes to show that, you know, you can be extremely talented and slip through the cracks. You know, creativity doesn't always get rewarded with lots of bucks. Just think of Vincent van Gogh. as we move towards the conclusion of this film, the plot focuses more on re-evaluating the adolescents to see if they've had any progress involved in this. Of course, his meetings with the families, and it doesn't come out with any magical answers to how to get the results that all of them are wanting, which is of course going back into their communities, into their families. So there's no magic sort of bullet, but it sort of seems to be selling the notion that time with appropriate, caring therapists can help, and the ability to make relationships within the group can act as a catalyst as well. There's a very traumatic scene involving Kenny, who shares a room with Lyle, and he's quite a withdrawn character. He appears to be possibly a native Indian, although I'm not sure about that, and he's made progress, and a meeting takes place involving him and his stepfather, which has been agreed to by Cheadle, Dr. David Monroe, and the doctor lays out the purpose of the meeting, that it's to facilitate an assessment of how the relationship between the stepfather and his stepson has developed, and this scene acknowledges that therapists often make mistakes in terms of bringing things together when they're not totally sure about whether either party is capable of handling the interaction due to the damage that's clearly evident between them that's occurred in the past. Not quite sure whether this particular relationship has been the result of physical abuse or sexual abuse or just emotional abuse. But anyway, the boy Kenny starts to become very withdrawn, and when the doctor suggests that he and his stepfather remain alone in the room while the doctor goes out, it becomes evident that Kenny can't handle this, and this leads to an aggressive response from the stepfather, and the doctor, with the help of his staff, manages to avert a sort of attack by the stepfather on the boy, which doesn't develop into anything too tragic, but his level of anger towards his stepson has been provoked by the stepson's anxiety at being left alone with him. An acknowledgement is then made by the doctor that he's made the mistake in assuming that it was the right time for them to come together, and this is what I like about it. It's not sort of apportioning blame, which it could easily be done in terms of one party or the other, but accepting that this type of therapy, this type of intervention doesn't always succeed. The best scene so far in this movie was a group therapy meeting to discuss Kenny and how they can best help him. Kenny's, as a result of this abortion of a meeting, has had to go into award for 24-hour watch, suicide watch, I guess, and emotions are really high. What then transposes is one of the guys becomes critical of Kenny because he's sought the affection of young children as a result of not getting any affection that's appropriate from his stepfather. This boy starts to criticise Ken, saying he got what he deserved, and Locke reacts, so we get an anger fight between the two, and the doctor separates them and then displays the aggression in front of the group to illustrate that for everyone we could all choose to go crazy, to destroy, to break things. And then he gives a sort of preachy message to the group that life's a struggle for us all, and we have to choose whether we want to go forward or whether we want to end our own life. Cheadle is absolutely tremendous, really tremendous. He frightens the group because it's probably the first display of real anger and frustration, all that he experiences on a daily basis as he attempts to help these youngsters handle life. Excellent. Another powerful scene as an inmate comes to the time where it's time to go home, and all that fear of being alone from the group. The group has been very supportive, has enabled attachments to develop, but now it's time to deal with loss again and go forth with sufficient self-confidence to hope that one can work out the problem outside. Within the institution, of course, there's been highly qualified people there to help. Now it's time to test out whether that can impact one enough outside with those, in many cases, the people who have contributed to one having to need the treatment. So has the trust been rebuilt sufficient? And once again, it's brought out lots of feelings in me as to some of the damaged youngsters that I dealt with and the impact that I may have had on them. And one boy comes to mind, whose name was Christopher Chong. He's now called Charlie. Can't even remember he's in early 60s now, and we're still in touch. And his aggression that I managed to control, and then continue to offer him the care and support without the need for me to be angry, he's held on to for the rest of his life. So if I've done no more in my life, I've contributed to his survival, his avoidance of incarceration, his ability to have a family. The intensity leads to one of the inmates to cut boxed up, I think, and it's trauma for the whole unit. All watching as this body quivers as the blood pours out of his throat. Finally, the movie looks tentatively at the notion of institutionalization and the number of inmates who consider the institution as the reason for their mental illness and have this dream of escaping and finding a new life somewhere. And that's how we see Lyle. He decides to take his chances on the outside after he's caught a glimpse of sexual love with Tracy, seeing his roommate basically lose his sanity with regard to the damage that his stepfather had done by raping him, and then of course the macho challenge of being the strongest, which he eventually proves, but he refrains from really damaging the youth. Some self-discipline, self-control has emerged. It's a very, very powerful piece of work. Finally, as the credits run through, music score, Thurston Moore from Sonic Youth, a band that I'm not that familiar with, but I know him.